This video, we're going to be stitching our B1 and B4 blocks. This is at the end of your nesting baskets, and you'll need to have your hoop shape pattern or use your files to stitch one on stabilizer, and you will use that to cut out your hoop shape. So we will need 2 of those. We will need 4 pieces of fabric, 2 for each one, and I'm going to go ahead and do 2 in the hoop. In the hoop I have tearaway stabilizer, a lightweight tearaway, and you will also need some embroidery thread. You will need wash away thread and an embroidery bobbin. We do not need the matching bobbin for these 2 files. I'm going to stitch the first step in the embroidery thread. We suggest you use water soluble thread, but I'll use the embroidery so it can be seen in the video. So here's the outline for my hoop shape. So I will take my hoop shape that I've cut out ahead of time and I'll place it inside the stitching. We're going to line up the stitching on this narrower side, and the hoop shape won't quite come to this edge here because this is where the bend will be, and we just want to make sure it's going to have enough room to bend. So I'll just put a little bit of glue on, place it within the stitching, aligning this edge. And you'll see there's a little bit of a gap up here. And I'll do the same with the other one I have ready in my hoop. And I will use the water soluble thread for the next step, and it will tack down the hoop shape. So my hoop shape is tacked down, both of them. And I did mark in my hoop and my stabilizer which block this is, and I will transfer that mark to the actual fabric after it's tacked down. The quilting is in a slightly different spot, so you don't want to confuse these 2 blocks. Then we'll take our fabric that's cut for this particular block and we'll place it right side up, centering it over the hoop shape, so you can kind of peek underneath and get it centered. We'll do that to both of them. Again, right side up. I will use this piece. Get it centered. And I'm going to stay with my water-soluble thread in the needle, and it will tack down the fabric around this shape. So my fabric is tacked down, and this is just on the front of the block, and I'm going to transfer this B1 probably right here within the seam allowance, and then this one is a B4, so I will do the same thing. This is a Frixion pen. It will iron off, but sometimes it leaves a mark, so I do put it within the seam allowance just in case that happens. And now we will put our quilting thread in the needle only, not the bobbin, and we'll quilt this area. And in case you're wondering, I don't know if you can see these 2 lines right here. These are the little goalposts, I guess, which we're going to align our handle with in the next couple of steps. So here's my finished pieces with the quilting all done, and it's hard to see on the video, but I'm going to go ahead and draw in this line that was stitched with the water soluble. There's a line here and also a line here, and this is where we're going to put our handles. So I'll go ahead and do it on this one as well. The handles are going to go right side down. So here's my handles after all the stabilizer has been removed. I can tell the right side from the wrong side because the stitching is just a little prettier on the right side than it is on the wrong side. So we're going to put them right side down in between those little goal posts. And we're going to extend, this is my edge here, we're going to extend the seam allowance into the edge of the block. So I just want it to come out maybe just like a 1/16 of an inch. So we'll put that there. I'm going to put a neutral thread in my needle. I like to use Aurifil. My machine really likes it. It stitches a nice secure seam with the Aurifil. So I'll go ahead and get these two put on here. I might even use just a little dab of glue stick. And I'm going to put that in the seam allowance just to kind of hold it in place. Extend it a little bit past this line and in between those little lines that I drew. That glue where I have it won't show at all on the outside when our nesting box is finished. Okay, so I'll take this over to the machine with my Aurifil in, and the machine is going to stitch a couple of times over this to hold it in place. So I did slow the speed of my machine all the way down as much as I could so that I could just keep an eye on it while it's sewing. I'm making sure that my satin stitching is extending a little bit into the seam allowance. I'm going to drop my needle, pull up my bobbin thread, and I can really tell that it's in the right place. Hit the start, and it's slowed down so that I can just make sure. There we go. So it's going across and going back. And that's all there is to that. And just a little check to be sure I like where it is. If I flip this down, I should not see a gap in my stitching right here. And if I do, I can just pop out a few stitches and give it another try. So our last step in the stitching of these two blocks is to take two more pieces of fabric, and with the right side down, so we have right sides together, I'm going to place the fabric directly over the other fabric. Right sides together again. And it's going to stitch a seam. So I'm leaving the same thread in the needle. Just making sure all my fabric's lined up. Touch my start button. My machine is still slowed down. My job is just to keep this fabric nice and flat. So it's going to go back over, so I'm just going to speed it up now that I've got it down one time. And now we'll repeat for the second block. So my blocks are completely stitched. I've taken them out of the hoop. I have, again, made sure that they are marked before I go ahead and trim them, so I don't forget which ones they are. I will cut them apart, and we're just very carefully going to remove the stabilizer. So I turned it over, and I can see where my stitching is, and I'll just carefully tear it away on all sides. And then our block has basically 3 stitch sides. We've got this side, the top, and this side. I want to trim this side, and this side, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to leave the open end alone. I'm not going to trim that at all yet. So 1/4 inch. You can use the Trimmer by George to help you do that, the ruler side. I'd be a little careful down at that corner here. I don't want to cut into it, so I'm just going to very carefully, I may have to finish it up with a scissors, which will be fine. Can eyeball my 1/4 inch right there so I don't cut what I don't want to cut. So there, my 3 sides are trimmed. Now this corner right here, we're going to clip it right up to the stitching. You can tell better on the other side. Clip it right up to the stitching. And then this little corner right here, we're just going to trim it off, being careful not to cut your stitching. So that's all we have to do to trim it. Then we're going to turn it right side out. If you grab into the corners, you can poke them right out. And because you clipped here, they should turn very easily. And I will take, I'm using the point of my scissors, and I'm going to carefully poke that out, very carefully. I don't want to poke through the fabric. And then you can just kind of finger press it. I've got my iron heating. I am going to go over and touch up the edges with my iron. And then after it's pressed, I will just machine based on the sewing machine right along here in the seam allowance. And then I will trim this edge to a 1/4 inch. And I'll have my B1 and my B4 ready to go.